We continue our story in the episode Toxin or Toxicity, right? Basically, a few hours before Override gets the call. Bulkhead and Wheeljack are at the volcano where they discover the Toxin. And again, keep in mind with actually having Wheeljack there, I actually do think they would actually be able to come up with this plan a lot quicker than Bulkhead going with, or basically being advised by H. Fowler. However, they're not the only ones here. Megatron arrives with Six Shot. Ooh, yeah, this ain't looking too good here for them. And even Wheeljack's like, oh man, this is some bull. I'd rather be fighting Dreadwing or that Lugnut guy. But this is actually where Megatron and Six Shot do transform a little bit away from them because they do know how the toxin works. And this is where Megatron simply states they can hand over the toxin and they can pretty much live at this point. To which Six Shot says, or don't hand it over, and we'll just pry it from your cold, dead, offline hands. And to which Wheeljack is actually gearing for a fight, actually wanting to test his mettle against either Megatron or Six Shot. However, Bulkhead advises against it, stating that right now their priority is to get the toxin out and away from Decepticon hands. To which Megatron simply states, that would be a wise decision, if you could pull it off. To which Bulkhead actually, use this opportunity to blast Megatron back. Keep in mind, Bulkhead is one of the few Autobots strong enough to actually be able to harm Megatron, like, genuinely. So I think him being able to send Megatron flying with a blast is just more appropriate. And this is where Wheeljack grabs the toxin, transforms, and drives towards the top of the volcano. Megatron gets up and transforms and flies after Wheeljack, and before Bulkhead can probably shoot him again, Six Shot tackles Bulkhead to the ground, causing them to tumble around. Now, the battle between both sides is incredible. This is where we actually see Wheeljack being able to put some moves on Megatron. But because Wheeljack had the toxin for so long, he's not doing the best here. He's not in the best shape. Still able to at least slash Megatron across the chest here. No doubt about that. But again, Megatron is able to not only get the upper hand, but straight up slams Wheeljack into the ground, kicks him across the battlefield, and actually claims the toxin. But he makes sure to keep it in the container before, transporting it, considering the fact that it is still a very dangerous and toxic chemical. Albeit, that would be an interesting case. Does the toxin actually affect Megatron because he has Dark Energon in him? I mean, if you think about it, right? Dark Energon's already known for its life-draining and weakening properties, while toxin is kind of just like the same thing, but more poisonous, if you will. So maybe it doesn't affect Megatron the same way it does, but then again, we just simply don't know. But let's say Megatron does keep the container for the sake of his troops. Meanwhile, back with Six Shot and Bulkhead, they're both just straight up going at it. I mean, it's more detrimental for Bulkhead than it is for Six Shot because of his Nutrium armor. He's just insanely more durable than he is, and close enough in strength to where he can actually overpower Bulkhead, and this is where he actually just overwhelms the guy and knocks him aside or knocks him prone. And then before Bulkhead can get up, Six Shot turns into his tank form and blasts Bulkhead in the back, giving him the same injury Hardshell would have gave him. And this is where we actually see Wheeljack being stood over by Megatron. He's gloating a little bit. I mean, I don't see why not. I mean, he's got Dreadwing as his second in command, Six Shot as super weapon, he's got his Decepticon army, and he's got the toxin. Oh yeah, he's about to get an Autobot kill. Man, it's about to be a very good couple episodes for Megatron. But this is where a space bridge opens, and Override comes in, charging through, hitting him with a flying punch. But Megatron still does fire at Wheeljack. But the blast itself is not direly fatal. However, it does blast Wheeljack in the chest to the point where his chest is still torn open, just inches away from his spark. Meanwhile, Six Shot actually arrives and states, "Override! Nice of you to finally arrive. Now we can actually settle this." And this is where he actually holds up Bulkhead's lifeless, or, not lifeless, well, defeated body, and tosses him right next to Wheeljack. And this is where Six Shot is like, believe it or not, the big guy actually put up a fight. Thought he was going to crack my armor for a minute. But as you can see, I am not harmed or dead. So, what do you say, Override? And this is where he takes out his sword, as Megatron also takes out his own. And this is where they both simply rush at her, getting ready to kill her. But Override is crafty. She's smart. She's not going to just sit there and take it. And keep in mind, Override still has the Renaissance Blaster. So, this becomes a quick 2 against 1, with Override actually using the Renaissance Blaster more on Megatron than she is with Six Shot. Now, with Six Shot, she's actually utilizing her skills in combat to throw him around, or to at least push him around a little bit, and then utilizing the Renaissance Blaster. But she notices it does cause him more eternal damage than anything, which, again, still a good enough, I would definitely say still good enough in my book, in her book, in her opinion. So, yeah, she actually does put in a decent line of work, but this is where another space bridge opens and Ratchet runs out, seeing Wheeljack and Bulkhead, and this actually does cause Six Shot and Megatron to look at him. And he says, "Alright, boys, get him." And this is where a fully transformed Hunger and Ripper Snapper rush and tackle both Megatron and Six Shot respectively, with Ripper Snapper himself simply stating, "Oh yeah, now we get to have ourselves some real fun. Feels good to finally fight something after being awakened." And keep in mind, Megatron doesn't know they're Predicons. At least, not yet. The reason why I'm saying this is because not only is he a little bit caught up in the moment, but keep in mind, they forgot the Predicons that were even left on Earth to begin with. So I doubt Megatron would recognize them immediately. So this is where we actually have Hunger versus Six Shot and Ripper Snapper versus Megatron. And, well, Ripper Snapper is a bit battle hungry, if you will. He's enjoying the entire skirmish with Megatron. Claws against Blade, Blaster against Fire, turning it into his own Saurian dragon form, and he even pounces on Megatron, clamping down on his fusion cannon arm. And Megatron is like, "Get this infernal beast off me." And Six Shot tries to open fire, but this is where Hunger, being the more, I'll probably say the more onslaught of the two. What I mean by that is he's the more calm and collected one. But, he still has his Predicon tendency. So not only does he tackle Six Shot off, but he throws him so hard that it causes the volcano to actually begin erupting. But luckily, Ratchet and Override got Wheeljack and Bulkhead out of there, and even tell Hunger and Ripper Snapper to retreat. So Ripper Snapper lets go of Megatron, but before Hunger can go, or before Hunger actually decides to leave, he wants to prove something real quick. And this is where he straight up rushes towards Six Shot, blocks and grabs one of his arms, and slams his other hand into him, cracking his armor. Six Shot is dumbfounded, and he's like, no, that shouldn't be possible. What? No, this shouldn't be happening. But again, Megatron tells him they have no time for this, grabs the toxin, and retreats. We then head back to Decepticon Warship, where Megatron is simply telling his Decepticons how disappointed he is with their failure, and mourning the loss of Soundwave, his closest friend, one of his most important allies. But again, he says all is not lost. They managed to cripple 2 of the Autobots, and now know they have Predicons. I wish we actually knew how we could actually obtain such a power. To which Lugnut actually says something smart. What if they actually go back to Cybertron and see if Shockwave is alive? To which Megatron simply stated Starscream actually informed them that Shockwave was dead. And this is where Lugnut actually states, "My glorious King Megatron, Do you ever really believe Starscream is ever telling the truth, even about the status of one of your most loyal Decepticons? To which Megatron is actually taken aback, like, did he just say something smart? And to which Megatron is like, yes, that would simply work. However, we do need to understand where Hardshell is, or need to know where Hardshell is right now. To which Six Shot actually states that, well, believe it or not, he's actually arriving from the Harbinger. To which this is where he pretty much explained that, well, since you did explain that the Harbinger had many secrets, including the Immobilizer, mind you, Six Shot thought that maybe giving Hardshell something simple to do would actually be able to give them a one-up on the Autobots. And this is where Hardshell actually does return via a ground bridge, or a space bridge, if you will. And it says, Lord Megatron, I've actually found a multitude of things that could help you. To which Megatron is like, go on. And Hardshell actually breaks it down that Arachnid and Starscream never really looked into the Harbinger all that well. At least not the first half, if you will. And so, this is where Hardshell actually holds up two new protoforms. And this is where Megatron's like, well, this could be interesting. And he does look at the toxin container in his hand. And then turns to Knockout and simply asks, do you think you could apply this to one of the protoforms? It would be great to have a weapon of this kind of caliber with them, as well as any pieces and fragments of Soundwave. To which this is where Knockout's like, well, Lord Megatron, I could certainly do that. However, it will take some time, considering how destructive the properties of Toxin is. To which Megatron states he can be patient. As for right now, Lugnut, you have my permission to go to Cybertron. To which both of them bow and pretty much head on their way. So, Knockout actually does begin working on the protoforms. He's actually able to get the Soundwave one up and running a bit earlier with the help of Dark Energon and a few augmentations, just to kind of make it like it's not exactly Soundwave, and so that Megatron doesn't really get too comfortable. You might ask why he's doing this, and I'm actually going to say this is because he kind of understands that no matter how the clone is going to be, he's not going to be Soundwave. However, as for the Toxin drone, it takes a while, especially having to shield it from Toxin and being able to manipulate it. But when it's all said and done, Toxitron is born, a being that can utilize the Toxin poisonous properties for his own merit. And again, I do think that modeling him after Optimus Prime would actually be vital. And again, with the whole green and purple coloring, you at least still know he's a Decepticon. But this is where with the Dark Energon, we actually do have Sound Blaster being born. And I'll actually say he would definitely look like his more Cyberverse counterpart and have a bit of his personality. Loyal, simply the same as Soundwave, but more talkative and more cocky as well. And he has the high hopes, mind you, to actually avenge his predecessor, Soundwave. And to which, when the day of it comes, Knockout does reveal both Sound Blaster and Toxitron to Megatron, who is very pleased and is actually hoping to get started on the next few relics. But now we pan over to the Autobot base, or at least Autobot Outpost Omega. And this is where everything kind of, is a little bit grim but hopeful. The Autobots have the Forge of Solus Prime, the Apex Armor, the Renaissance Blaster, and they also have the Phase Shifter. So they have 4 relics at the moment. And again, they have the Predicons on their side now. So now it's going to be better for them overall. And this is where Cosmos ultimately states that, or Optimus actually checks on Bulkhead and Wheeljack's condition. And this is where Cosmos states that right now, they're not going to be in battle for a good minute. Wheeljack can't use his arms properly, and Bulkhead is barely going to be able to walk. So it's going to take a while for them to fully heal. And this is where we see Override at Autobot Hangar E training the Predicons. And actually here's their names: Hunger, Blight, Whippersnapper, Twin Strike, and Windraiser. And she appoints Hunger the leader of this team. Keep in mind, they cannot combine. Not just yet. But again, they are able to work as a well-synchronized team as Override begins to train them. But now we head over to somewhere else. That being Cybertron. We see Lugnut flying overhead, stating that no matter how long it takes, he will find Shockwave, and he will bring him back to his glorious king, Megatron, and get all the praise and glory that he can fathom. Into which Lugnut finally finds a laboratory, and he does bust through a little bit, but again, he is met by Shockwave, the actual Shockwave. And Shockwave, originally having his cannon raised, calms down when he sees it's Lugnut of all people, and simply asks, "Have you come for me, Lugnut?" To which Lugnut goes in the glorious name of his Lord and Master Megatron. He has come to bring him with you. And when he actually discusses whether or not he can recreate Predicons, this is where Shockwave snaps his fingers and tells him to come on out. To which we reveal Predicon, Skylynx, and Darksteel a lot more evolved than the original. I'm doing this because I do feel like it is important, considering the fact that the Autobots have worked on their Predicons and actually advanced them. I can see Shockwave actually realizing the Predicons have no record election of transforming, actually working on this and pretty much accelerating their evolution to the point where they are now, still with their personalities. And so as they pretty much enter through the ground bridge back onto the Nemesis, Megatron actually laughs, saying Shockwave is just the tactical advantage he needs, and actually gives Lugnut full credit. To which Lugnut does get on his knees and starts glazing Megatron. And Megatron once again has to roll his eyes at the fact that, well, yeah, he's doing this again. What a world he's got to live in. But that is where we're going to leave off today, you guys. Shockwave is there. The Autobots and Decepticons have their Predicons respectively. And now we're just going to go ahead and talk about the Star Saber, the Enigma combination, and then the Cybertronian keys, and how each side is going to use them for their own benefit. And then one more time with Meg. Probably not in that order, but you guys understand what I mean. But hey, that's going to be all today, you guys. Please comment down below, like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. And yeah, I'll see you guys for another video. Peace.